Wife, it's Huw, front page of The Sun, suspended top BBC presenter in hospital. No crime, but Beeb makes shock new claims. The BBC is coming out of this looking very, very bad indeed, I think.
Yeah, what's extraordinary about the current situation in this fast-moving story is that The Sun, due to the fact that his courageous wife, Vicky Flynn, has revealed that Huw is in hospital suffering from serious mental health issues. The Sun has decided to lay off him, and I have a lot of respect for that decision. Meanwhile, the BBC is relentlessly chucking him under the bus. They are issuing more and more revelations every single second, and the story we're now getting is that many people who worked at the BBC felt intimidated and harassed by him.
And this is all information coming from the BBC.
From the BBC, they're reporting. So I think the BBC is now in serious sort of self-survival mode, and they have decided that Mr. Edwards will be sacrificed for the sake of the corporation.
Because let's put it this way, in addition to the questions that we were asking before we knew who it actually was, or before that person was identified by, as you say, his wife, in what was a very, courageous move for her to do. We know that there was a problem between the time that the complaint was reported and then the complaint actually being even given to the people that mattered, i.e. Huw Edwards himself, who didn't know about it until last Thursday, and Tim Davie, who didn't know about it until last Thursday. But now what we know is that if they knew who it was, and they knew that there were people complaining about it, and there was a culture, because it seems to be that there was a culture in the BBC News division of people being sent messages, inappropriate messages by Huw Edwards, Deborah Turness, who's the News and Current Affairs CEO, Jess Brammer, who's the editor of BBC News. Did they know about that?
Have we heard from them?
Has anybody complained to them about that? And if so, why have we not heard about that? And why have we not heard from them?
Why have we not heard from them? Indeed, Tim Davie, the Director General, I suppose it's correct that he's taking all the heat on this. But I think that these people, these executives who earn about 350 grand a year to run the news department...
Well, Deborah Turness is on more than 400,000.
Yeah, well, they should be making statements as well. And the story really, as I say, on a human level, you have to feel sorry for Huw Edwards. Let's not talk about what he may or may not have done at this stage.
Don't worry, the BBC will tell us.
But he's in hospital suffering from a serious mental health issue. So in that respect, on a human level, we feel sorry for him. But I think the story more and more switches to the BBC.
It does.
And the thing about Huw Edwards, as I say, we don't have any evidence here at TalkTV, but we read what we read in The Sun and the other newspapers. If the stories are true, there's a pattern of behaviour around Huw Edwards,
and it's impossible.
Dates back many years that the BBC did nothing about.
And it's impossible to believe, in my view, that people at the top of the chain in the BBC newsroom didn't know that was going on.
It's exactly
absolutely impossible.
Look, I know for a fact. I mean, Vanessa Feltz said to me last night on TalkTV, "Oh, I worked there 30 years."
She seemed shocked at what you said.
I never heard a word. Well, I did. And so did other people. It is not true to say there were not rumours surrounding Huw Edwards. And the BBC, their conduct throughout this saga has been reprehensible, to say the least. And one thing we must say, look, sympathy for Huw. No one wants to see anyone in hospital suffering from mental health issues, but that must not detract from, if these stories are true, he has behaved in a morally depraved way, and it's nothing to do with criminality. It's to do with the way he
the wokerati, of course. The wokerati, of course, would have you believe that because there's no crime allegedly being committed, according to the police, who seem to have discovered that very quickly, despite not knowing what all the other evidence is. They've already decided to close down their assessment and not do a proper investigation. I don't know how they can say that without seeing what else has been done. But at the end of the day, the wokerati are all saying, well, if there's no crime committed, then what's the problem? All he's been doing is looking at porn on the internet. Well, it's not quite that simple, because it involves a powerful older man doing things and taking advantage of, you might say, younger people. And I would put it to you this way. I've got a teenage son. If he wants to enter the media business, which he's expressed an interest in doing, and I get him some kind of work experience role or some kind of, internship at the BBC, am I expected to get letters for notes from him to say, by the way, I keep getting sort of hit upon by a very senior member of the BBC presenting staff? Is that supposedly okay then with the wokerati? How about this from John Sopel, our favourite lefty former BBC incumbent, right? He says, it would be a crying shame if this is the last we see of Huw Edwards on television when the allegations have turned out to be not that much. Well, I'm pleased to see that he knows what the allegations are.
What about the, we have to keep putting this caveat in, the alleged victims. I mean, as I say, a pattern of behaviour is emerging here. And if these stories are true, there are quite a few victims of what Huw Edwards was allegedly doing.
I mean, they may or may not be victims, you know.
Well, they're alleged victims, and he allegedly harassed them, intimidated them,
paid them,
sent them pictures, got pictures from them. There are victims in this, so we will not accept what John Sopel, the biggest BBC apologist on the face of the earth, is saying about this. This guy, if these stories are true, Huw Edwards has acted in a way that is morally depraved, totally wrong, and he has no place on our screens. And by the way, Mr. Sopel, we will not be seeing Huw Edwards on the BBC ever again. You heard it here last.
Let's talk about how the BBC covered their own story yesterday, because when it broke last night,
I watched it.
You watched it. Tell us what you saw.
Well, this is exactly what I saw, and I ended up getting in trouble about it because Sophie Rayworth came on the 6 o'clock news, and I just happened to be passing the telly because I was getting ready to come in and do the talk, and I thought, oh my God, she just went, Huw Edwards has resigned. Over to our media correspondent, Katie Razzle. He hasn't resigned. His wife says he's in hospital.
So they managed to get that wrong.
They can't even report their own story properly.
And what about Clive Myrie? He was on
Clive Myrie later on the 10 o'clock news looked as if he was virtually crying. You know, he was one of the greatest broadcasters ever, one of the most famous faces, and now his career lies in ruins. And all this. It's like, these people, this is what I think's wrong. One of the many things that is wrong for the BBC. People join the BBC when they're about 22 years old, and they're still there when they're 65.
Yeah,
You know, it cannot be healthy.
He spent his entire career at the BBC.
Yeah.
45 years.
It's not healthy to stay in one place
as somebody
for 40 years.
As somebody pointed out to us yesterday when we were revealing all the salaries of the BBC top knobs, what about John Simpson, who only appears basically whenever there's an invasion of some country that he happens to have been to? He's still making 180 grand.
Yeah, and I believe he's about 75. So where are the job opportunities for young up-and-comers when you're paying 75-year-olds nearly £200,000 a year to do very little at all?
Don't worry, they've got plenty more money to spray around. Don't worry at all.
I can see, actually, come to think, I can see why people stay there 40 years, because they're getting 300 grand a year. But seriously, these people become institutionalised. The BBC, to me, seems like a kind of weird cult that is separate from the rest of the nation. And they love themselves so much. They go, oh, this is about trust. We must be trusted. You think we're trusting you right now? Do you really think that? Well, if you do, I've got bad news for you. We are not.